Hey guys, Morktorkus here. So today we're going to be talking about Warlock for the upcoming Ashes of Outland expansion, checking out all of their new cards that they're getting in the full context of the entire set, in addition to the fact that we're going to be looking at 4 Theorycrafted deck lists at the end of the video, which I have come up with for the Warlock class, which have also informed my opinions on the cards as to whether I believe that they'll be run in decks and to what degree and to which decks they'll be in. So let's just hop right into it and look at what we've got. So the first card we've got is Hand of Gul'dan, 6 mana. When you play or discard this, draw 3 cards. So this card seems totally nuts. We do have a couple of cards which discard the highest cost card in your hand. One of them is the Nightshade Manor, which we will be looking at in a second, but we also have Expired Merchant, which is a 2-drop that lets you discard your highest cost card, and then when it dies you get 2 more copies, so you'll have tons of these Hands of Gul'dan. You'll be able to trigger them very easily in a deck that runs those cards. I think being able to draw that much basically for free is just absolutely insane, and I think that this will definitely form a new version of Zoo, which I have made a deck list for that, which we will be checking out at the end of the video. We did see on the reveal stream and with the deck recipe for Warlock that I did try out in the pre-release that you do end up overdrawing really hard, not having enough juice in the stuff that you're running, and perhaps some of it's a little overcosted, so you're not able to dump your hand fast enough in a lot of cases as well. So it's important that the way you build it, that you manage to have high impact, but also have the ability to flood the board with a lot of smaller threats, so that you're not having this awkward situation where you're trying to figure out how to get cards out of your hand when you're stuck with all these extra draws going to be coming at you if you ever accidentally manage to discard it again or something like that. Despite the fact that the deck might be a little awkward and might not be quite as strong as we hope it'll be, I think it will be very strong if built correctly, and I'm going to give this one 5 stars. Then we have Nightshade Manor, 4 mana, 5/5 demon with Rush, Battlecry, discard your highest cost card. So this card is clearly there to be support for the Hand of Gul'dan. It is a 4 mana 5/5 rush, which is insane, and if the Battlecry is an upside because you're using it on Hand of Gul'dan, then it is even more insane because it's effectively 4 mana 5/5 draw 3 cards, or draw 2 cards if you counted the Hand of Gul'dan itself being lost in the process. Given that in a deck where you're running Hand of Gul'dan and this kind of stuff, 6 mana should be the top of your mana curve so that you can rely on that being discarded. So even if you don't have Hand of Gul'dan, all of the stuff you do have in your hand should be pretty low mana costs and therefore probably a lower impact. So you don't feel too bad about discarding it if you do have to play this without your Hand of Gul'dan in hand. So I think if Hand of Gul'dan is good, then this will be amazing. It will be great in that same deck for sure. I don't necessarily think that it'll fit into other Zoo builds that don't run Hand of Gul'dan, if those exist really, but I do definitely think that it'll fit into the Hand of Gul'dan deck. So I'm going to give this 5 stars. Then we have Imprisoned Scrap Imp, 2 mana, 3/3 demon, dormant for 2 turns. When this awakens, give all minions in your hand +2/+2. So hand buff has been a bit of a struggling mechanic before, not always really hitting the mark, but I think it's best in Warlock, and it hasn't actually had a chance in Warlock before. And I think that in this Hand of Gul'dan archetype, where you can draw a ton of cards, being able to get a bunch of cheap cards that you can play out fast, but also having them have a high impact is going to be very important. So I think that this card will actually work great in there, combined with a ton of 1-drops. So you have this, you have all your 1-drops, They all get +2/+2. You flood the board with them, and I think that will be a great combo. I think outside of that application, this probably isn't going to see much play. You do have to get it early, as with most dormant cards. Otherwise, it's going to be a much lower impact card. But nonetheless, I think it's going to have a very strong upside to your deck if you run this in that Hand of Gul'dan deck. I'm going to give it 4 stars. And then we have Dark Glare, 3 mana, 3/4 demon. After your hero takes damage, refresh 2 mana crystals. So this is definitely a well-statted minion with the upside of basically when you're doing your hero power, it gives you a full refund on the mana you spent on it, so it's a free draw. And other self-damaging effects like Flame Imp or something like that do give you that extra mana to play with, so you can do a bunch of stuff in your turn. But despite how good this is, I found that I don't think I necessarily wanted to run it in any of the decks that I was building. I just had other options that I was more interested in. It's definitely a playable card. I just don't necessarily think that it's the best 3-drop option or just the best option for a zoo type deck, and in a slower deck, probably not there either. So for right now, I think you could run it in a zoo deck or something. I didn't run it in mine, but I still think it's playable. So I'm going to give it 3 stars. Then we have Canrathad Ebonlock, 2 mana, 3/2, your demons cost 1 less, and Death Rattle, shuffle Canrathad Prime into your deck. And the Prime minion is an 8 mana, 7/6, Battlecry, summon 3 friendly demons that died this game. So the first part of it definitely looks very good in a zoo deck where you want that 1 mana discount so you can drop a bunch of 1 mana demons. So the first half of this card definitely looks very good in a zoo deck because of that demon discount. It's also just a fine aggressively statted 2-drop otherwise. So I think this definitely fits very well into zoo decks. I also think that the second part looks very good in a slower deck, and you definitely still feel fine with it being in a zoo deck. You're starting off with a 7/6 body, so when you get those 3 demons, even if they're not that large, that will still be a big enough swing for the 8 mana that you spend. But in a slower deck, this first part before the Prime won't be that impactful, but as a Warlock, you should be able to draw through your deck quite quickly, so you'll get that Prime, and you can summon some very large demons, and I do like that idea as well, so I think that this fits into a lot of decks, and I did put it into most of my decks. I'm going to give this one 5 stars. Then we have Enhanced Dreadlord, 8 mana, 5/7 demon with Taunt and Death Rattle, summon a 5/5 Dreadlord with Lifesteal. So all of these cards that have these very substantial first bodies followed by very substantial second bodies, I'm really interested in. I still don't know if they're a little too slow for the meta that we're going to be having, but this one has Taunt and then it has Lifesteal, which are both very good defensive keywords to keep you going in a slower deck, as long as you make it to the point that you can actually play it and you don't get sapped or blackjack stunnered or anything like that. It's also a great demon to bring back with your Canrathad Prime, so that makes a lot of sense in these slower Warlock decks. I did put it into a couple of deck lists that I made, which are slower lists, though probably the best slow Warlock will be just general Galakrond Warlock, which won't be changing very much, and you probably won't put this in there. But I think if these other lists end up working, which I don't necessarily have a huge amount of confidence in, this will definitely be a good card in those, I think. So I'm going to give this 3 stars. Then we have Unstable Felbolt, 1 mana, deal 3 damage to an enemy minion and a random friendly one. So I think this card's going to be very meta dependent. My initial thought is that the dealing 3 damage with this drawback is not that substantial. If it didn't have the drawback, you might want to run it to deal with more smaller threats and stuff like that, but because of this drawback, it does hurt quite a bit. Obviously, if you don't have a minion, it won't matter too much, so in this slower warlocks, you might just get away with not having to damage your own stuff with it. But I still didn't feel that inclined towards running it in anything. But if we do end up really needing to remove some early game threats and stuff, then this will probably end up eventually fitting into decks. But for the time being, I didn't feel the inclination to run it, so I'm going to give it 2 stars. Then we have Killa Dan the Breaker, 6 mana, 3/3, battlecry, destroy a minion. If drawn this turn, instead destroy all minions except this one. So if you drew it the turn that you want to play it, then it's a Twisting Nether for 2 less mana on with a 3/3 body attached to it. I think it's very unlikely for you to line this up exactly when you want it to be that way. I think it's better to just run a Twisting Nether, which is more consistent for that effect. So then we have to look at the single target, which is then you're removing 1 minion and you get a 3/3 attached to that. That definitely seems good, so maybe just having that be there for that, and then potentially having the upside of sometimes drawing a Twisting Nether effect when you need it can be pretty good. You can definitely make it have the definitive way of being a Twisting Nether effect if you use Plot Twist and then redraw it like that, though you might not necessarily get it back that way, which is another problem. Also, there's the issue that sometimes you'll draw it the turn you want to remove 1 minion, and you have a significant board that you don't want to remove, and then you can't really play it because destroying your own board will be more detrimental. So it's a little bit of an awkward card. I think that you might be inclined to run it in a slower warlock, but you might not either. It's definitely an option, but you don't need it, that's for sure. So I'm going to give this 3 stars. Then we have Dark Portal, 4 mana, draw a minion. If you have at least 8 cards in hand, it costs 5 less. So when you're playing a slower warlock deck, generally speaking, getting to 8 cards isn't that difficult. So it's probably going to be somewhat consistent that you can have this effect go off. Though the only concern is that running a deck with no low-cost minions is very difficult for Warlock, I'd say. I think in most cases you're going to have to risk low rolling on this and hitting something that costs less than 5 and not getting the full discount. If it costs like 3 mana, the thing that you're drawing, then the effect kind of costed 1 mana because the card would have costed 3 anyways, and you can backload that discount for later on or something like that. So it's not terrible if that happens. I don't necessarily think that this will have an incredibly huge impact on anything. I did put it into one-hand Warlock that I have, but that's definitely going to be more of a meme deck than anything. So I think right now we don't really have a great place for it, and I'm going to give it 2 stars. Then we have Shadow Council, 1 mana, replace your hand with random demons, give them +2/+2. So obviously an effect like this is kind of crazy, lots of randomness. We're going to have so many imprisoned cards that are demons, so the chance of you having a bunch of stuff that can't initially benefit from the stats that they get is quite high. Despite that, I did see Trump make a video where he was doing pretty well with this, testing it out. Though obviously you can just pick the good clips when you're making a video like that. I think it'll definitely be a fun meme card to try out, and I did make a deck that runs this card if you want to check that out. But I think that overall it's probably a 1-star card. Alright, let's check out the deck lists that I've come up with for Warlock this expansion. So the first one I have here is a Hand of Gul'dan Zoo deck. It's running a lot of 1-drops, including of course Battle Mage, and it's got Argent Squire, Flame Imp, and Fiendish Servant, and Voidwalker. To combine with those, we have the Magic Carpet, so we can give them Rush and that extra attack, as well as the lackeys that we get off of Evil Genius, which is also in this list. Of course, we've got the Expired Merchant, the Matron, and Hand of Gul'dan to do that draw engine that's going to be really defining this deck. The Scrap Imp is there to buff up our minions so they have that big impact when they come down the board, while also being able to cycle through very quickly and offload cards on a regular basis. We've also got these Frenzied Fellwings that are easy to get out of your hand because of the fact that they will cost 0 when you get enough damage on face, which you should be if you're at all planning on winning the game. We've got that Canrathat Ebonlock, making it even easier to drop a bunch of these demons all at once. And we've got the Faceless Corruptors, which of course are really good when you've got lots of little stuff on board, and are going to be even better if buffed by that Scrap Imp. So I think this deck looks really good. I think this list is really solid, and I think that this will potentially be the best Warlock deck coming into the next expansion. Then we've got another Zoo deck. This is a Galakrond Zoo deck. I was thinking about theory crafting a control Galakrond Warlock, but I don't think it's losing enough cards for me to bother. It's probably going to stay quite similar. But the Galakrond Zoo list is losing some pretty important pieces, so I did want to make one of these guys. So it's obviously got a lot of the Galakrond cards, so that you can get the invocations and get those 1/1s on board. We are losing the Scarab Egg, but instead now I have in here the Serpent Egg, which serves a similar purpose. It's still a target for Evil Genius, and that's the main synergy that we had with that. Though, obviously it makes Knife Juggler a lot weaker not having the Scarab Egg in the deck. But obviously it's still going to be a fine card when we're summoning 2 1/1s every time a invocation goes off. But I did decide to run Terran Gorefiend in here, just to have that ability to pop that down and turn your smaller board into a bigger threat. It is a little bit of a negative tempo card in a lot of cases, but it is a bit of an experiment, and it doesn't have to stay in this deck list for the long run. But I did want to try it out. And we still do have Canrathat Ebonlock in here, which might bring back a lot of 1/1s, but hopefully it will bring back some of these bigger demons, especially off of your Galakrond, that will hopefully give you some impactful stuff. Though Galakrond itself might get pretty nerfed by the fact that a lot of the demons you're going to summon off of it might just be dormant when they appear, so that could be a little bit of an issue, but we shall see. Galakrond Zoo has definitely been solid previously. I think it might be a little weaker now with this version, but I definitely still think that it will be a strong deck in general. So I look forward to trying this out as well. Then we have a bit more of a meme deck with my Shadow Council Portal deck. So we got both the Dark Portal and the Shadow Council, both cards I don't have a ton of high expectations for, but I do want to try this out. We've got the Scrap Imp and the Shadow Council, so you set up the Scrap Imp and then you play the Shadow Council. Then you're getting 4/4 on all of the demons that are going to be in your hand. You're definitely going to want to draw a bit before that happens so that you have a lot of big demons off of it. But otherwise it's generally just a kind of a hand Warlock with lots of board clears. We got Magtheridon because I do want to try that out in combination with Hellfire and stuff like that. We've got your normal Netherwing and Nether Breath and stuff. Without Mountain Giants, Hand Warlock's definitely going to be a lot weaker, but at least we still have Abyssal Summoner, even though that is definitely a lot lower impact. I don't think this deck list is optimized, or if it even is possible to optimize a deck list that has Shadow Council in it, but it'll definitely be fun to try this one out. And then we've got a Quest Warlock list that I've made. This one has obviously Plot Twist and Questing Explorer, I did run Killa Dan the Breaker in here because if you're going to have that plot twist, might as well be running Killa Dan so that you can sometimes use it as that cheap version of Twisting Nether, basically. I think since we lost Dollmaster Dorian, the crazy things you can do off of plot twists and stuff is a lot weaker, because now you only really have Betrug as the card that really benefits from when you do that shuffle. But we do have the upside of the hero power once the quest is done, and that's definitely important. I did run 2 Dragon Maw Skystalkers because I think they're better than Twilight Drakes off of the Betrug pull, which may be a little bit greedy of me. But we did need those dragon activators, so I'm running that in there. And we've got, obviously, the Enhanced Dreadlord, which I'm excited to be playing. And I ran Dragon Queen, Alexstrasza, and Zephyrus with the expectation that we're going to be drawing quite quickly through the deck. Even though we've got tons of 2-ofs, we should be able to eventually get to that point where there's no more duplicates, and those will be active, and then hopefully that can be when we can end out the game with this sort of list. I don't think this deck is optimized either. I felt a little awkward on how to build a Quest Warlock, to be honest. But I still think it looks decent, even though Quest Warlock and Plot Twist haven't been especially powerful lately. And I don't think that it's going to get a lot better. So this is probably just another fun list if you want to check it out. Alright, so that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Please comment down below what you think of Warlock, this expansion, and what decks you are excited to be trying out. Please subscribe for more of my content in the future. And definitely drop by my stream, twitch.tv/morktorcus. We are streaming at 7 p.m. PST every weekday, and I will be doing a all-day live stream of the expansion tomorrow on release day, so you can definitely check that out. So anyways, again, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one.